Welcome everybody. I need to get everybody's get the gallery going. There's everybody. Hello. Wow, 2 pages from the beginning. Awesome. Hello everybody and welcome to Get to Know VO. I am Tish Hicks. I'm the master sensei of the VO Dojo here in Burbank, California, and this is our free um I guess a webinar, informational webinar, but a free opportunity that we do each month that we focus on one aspect of voiceover that you might want to know more about. So it's called Get to Know VO. Kelsey B is here as our team. She is facilitating this call, and we are so super excited for a Halloween treat to welcome Sébastien Croteau from the Monster Factory to join us today. And we are going to be talking about extreme vocalization and vocal care. So creature voices, extreme vocalization, and how to take care of your voice and get to know your voice. So fantastic that you're all here. Would love to hear where you're calling from or joining us from in the chat. And and just as I'm talking about extreme vocalization, my throat dries out and I have to gasp. And yeah, so welcome everyone. Sebastian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, and then we'll jump into what you've come to share. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for being
So
here.
first, thank you for inviting me. As I was saying, Halloween is kind of my Christmas for me because I do monster and creature voices. So usually the month of October is pretty busy. And thank everyone who actually registered to attend. I appreciate you all being there. So where am I coming from? Right? Because I wasn't born a creature voice actor, but I started extreme voices pretty early in my life, as young as the age of 15 years old.
Mm.
I actually discovered, because I was always a huge fan of Cookie Monster. Cheers for Cookie. I was a fan of Commander Cobra in G.I. Joe. Hey, G.I. Joe, attack! And for me, every villain in cartoon was the best. Of course, I was publicly rooting for the heroes, but I was secretly in love with the villains because they had the most interesting voices. So my interest from weird voice comes from there. And then I became a choir boy for a few years.
On
And
the other
then,
hand,
yeah, well, I went from hallelujah to pretty quickly. And I actually started playing in a metal band when I was 15 years old, a while ago. And then I started to try to explore my voice. Like I've learned throat singing, so Tibetan throat singing, Tuvan throat singing, overtone singing, Inuit throat singing. I actually had the chance to study with Tibetan monks, Inuit throat singers, with people
wow.
from Tuva. So it kind of broadened my vocal palette. If again,
Hmm.
I'm French, so sometimes I might stumble a little bit upon the word, but I'm usually quite comfortable in English. But yeah,
Mm.
so it gave me a new vision about what I was doing in terms of voices, and because I made a few friends. In the metal community, at some point, one of my friends started to work for Ubisoft Montreal in 2005, and they were actually looking for something really weird for their voices, for their creature and the monster, and they didn't want to rely on what people usually rely on, basically, which is animal sound libraries for this. Even
Hmm.
today, probably 95% of all the creature and monsters in video game are done with animal sound libraries. So that's one thing. Um, so I got the meeting, and I didn't know at that time how much time it took for a video game to be developed. So I got the first meeting, and then I didn't have any news for like 8 months. So I really thought that I blew my kind of audition, right? It's like, well, I'm not having any news. So basically, I was contacted again 8 months after. I got to record 8 hours a day for 2 days. I was actually coughing blood on the second day. That was too
Wow.
much. That was the first recording session.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's taking your horror movie very seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, and then after I started there, my career in voice acting didn't come from studying necessarily voice acting, but by actively doing a voice acting. And then after Ubisoft contacted me again to choke for 2 hours for Assassin's Creed 2, because when you choke someone with a poison blade in Assassin's Creed 2, the person is choking on his mucus. So I got paid 2 hours to choke. Basically, and then I work on Prince of Persia, and from there I started to slowly build the team that I have today, the team of the Monster Factory. But I went from one contract every 2 years now to recording mostly almost every week for
Wow.
creature and monster voices. So you can see that, the road that I took to get into creature vocalization is like that. But yeah, I've been doing extreme voices for basically 36 years now. And before you ask, I had laryngoscopic examination twice in the last 2 years, and I'm vocally healthy. And all the people that I work with, or mostly metal vocalists comfortable with acting, an actor comfortable with screaming. Because I have a mix of both of them. Because when you train specifically for extreme voices, if it's your primary focus, you can learn to get comfortable with most of those vocal effects, and you can actually sustain that, in my case and in the case of my colleagues, for years, right? So that's where I come from.
Excellent. 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 Well, we're so excited to have you share your insights. Why don't we get started? I think there's a
Absolutely.
good
Well,
yeah.
so let's get started on creature voice acting, right?
Mhm.
So a little definition, because when we think about creature voice acting, what is creature voice acting? So creature voice acting for me is the art of bringing believable life to monster and creature by producing natural and organic vocal effect, or what I would call rough vocal effect, right? Or even what we could call extreme vocal effect. So for me, the important thing is always to be able to create the vocal effect yourself. Like, I understand there's a lot of plugin, even software that can modify your voice. But for me, if I cannot do it with my voice, or sometimes I use PVC pipe, just to change the shape of the sound as well. But for me, it's all based on the capacity of producing different sound with the human voice, right? So that's my definition of creature voice acting. Now, if we dive a little bit more into the details of creature voice acting, well, of course, it's not just about the sound effect. And it's more than mimicry of sound, but it starts with mimicry of sound. Like, human have an amazing capacity of being able to imitate a lot of different sound and a lot of different noise. And of course, if you want to learn to get comfortable with a very specific vocal effect, you have to listen to other people or other audio references, and you start trying to imitate what you're hearing, right? So it's not just mimicry, but it starts with that. When I was saying, when I was a kid, I was listening to Cookie Monster, and I was trying to imitate. Of course, I couldn't do it back then. I was trying to do. And I couldn't do the voice. I couldn't do the voice of Commander Cobra, but I was trying to imitate the sound. And if you know the amazing creature voice actor, D. Bradley Baker, like, he talks about that a lot, about listening to insects or animal and trying to imitate the sound. So when we talk about that, again, it's not only mimicry, but it starts with that. You want to try and imitate a very specific sound. And even when I started to sing metal music, I started to sing metal music because there was no YouTube tutorial, no book, no nothing when I started. So I was basically listening to the voice on cassette, right? It was cassette. It was not CD. I'm that old. But it was cassette, and I was trying to imitate the voice that I was hearing, right? So it starts with that. In creature voice acting, vocal techniques and ability to sustain the sound matters a little bit more than acting. Now, this is controversial when I say that, but I'm going to explain it why. In creature voice acting or any kind of humanoid vocal effect that we do, for example, for an orc or an urukai, whoa, meat is back on the menu, boy. The vocal effect is integral to the character. It's actually part of its identity, right? It's intimately tied to its identity. So if I'm no longer able to sustain the vocal effect, does the character still exist? Now, I see some of you doing, you're absolutely right. And no amount of acting skill will bring back your voice. And even if you try to compensate, for example, let's say that, oh, this is the voice technique you're going for, and then you can no longer do that vocal effect, and you try to still do a low voice and like this, well, I'm sorry to say this is no longer the character. This is not the character you auditioned for. This is not the character they're expecting you to do. So I'm not saying acting doesn't matter at all. I'm not saying that. But sustainability of the precise vocal effect you're doing for the character matters a little bit more because it's tied to the identity of the character directly. I'm sorry, because I see comments. I'm trying to ignore the comments, and I apologize for that.
Oh no! Comment. We'll answer.
Yeah, we'll get back.
We'll answer questions later. Yeah.
If we think about what I call pure creature vocalization, not with script line, because the funny thing is, since I started doing that for the last 19 years now, I rarely have a script. I have emotion. I have action. What we call sometimes even in United Kingdom, like emotes, grunts. Like that's the core of what I have to do. So basically I have no script. So for me, it is a world where raw emotion are actually expressed through sound instead of word. So how to convey, anger, sadness, melancholy, a lot of different emotion. Well, if you are doing a zombie, there's not going to be a lot of variation in terms of emotion, right? It's going to be aggressive from the beginning to the end of the recording session because it's rare that, for example, that something like the past or the narrative element that would affect a human role will affect a creature like, for example, a zombie. Like if your parent abandoned you when you were a human and you are a certain way as a human, if you're turning into a zombie, like all that goes through the door because you're not going to be the zombie who was abandoned by his parent. You're going to be the zombie that wants to eat people. So there's that. So when we talk about sound, we're basically talking about your ability to realistically do certain action with different vowel and consonant, right? That's the core of what I do. I play with vowels and I play with consonant. And when you do that for a long time, but because that's also real for human emotes and human grunts and human environmental sound, is that there's always a more realistic way to perform those sounds. There's specific vowel and specific consonant that convey the emotion more realistically. I'm going to give you an example. If we're talking about attack sound, right? Like now I'm going to use my human voice. Let's say I have to do an attack sound. Like a lot of people say, oh, you just have to go through the alphabet, right? So if I start my attack sound with a B, ba, with a D, da, with a R, ra, oh, that's more like it. With a T, ta, oh, works better. With a P, ba, no, not that much. So the thing is, when you do that for a long time, you find out that there's specific vowel and consonant for paid sound for all the types of sound that are more accurate. And you can use those, but depending on the voice technique that you're using, sometimes some vowel and consonant are more difficult to pronounce. Like if I'm doing inhale voices, so ingressive sound, if I try to speak like this, I can do vowel very easily, but consonants, some of them are really hard. So I'm going to be, so each sometimes some vocal effect have a limitation to what you can actually do with that. And of course, for a lot of humanoid character, timing, context, intent, tone, subtext, or key element, but like I explained with the zombie thing, there's less impact on the character, right? If you play a human character and at some point it's going to turn into a zombie, everything that he experiences as a human character won't matter much because he's a zombie and he just want to eat people, right? It's not going to be like Bob in Day of the Dead, the zombie who like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like it's going to be a zombie that wants to eat you. And of course, because we rarely work with script, improvisational skills, precision, and inventiveness are highly necessary because you have to come up with your own vocalization. You have to come up with 15, 20, sometimes 30 variation of the same action. And it's not scripted. You have to come up with them. So that's the part where if you're good at improvising, that's going to help you tremendously. And for some of the vocal effect, actually, it's not all vocal effect, or what I would consider rough vocal effect or extreme vocal effect, but it's for some of them, it's usually vocally stressing, right? It's not a regular usage of your voice. And the thing is, like people think that, I mean, in the video game industry, for people who don't necessarily know, D. Bradley Baker, Fred Tatasciore, a lot of amazing other creature voice talent, for them it's fairly new. Creature voice acting, it's something that is, but when you look at the history of creature voice acting, it's something that people have been doing for over 20 years, right? But now it's mostly Animal Sound Library or a software called the Humanizer, which will modify the voice in real time. So when you're doing a sound, it actually transforms your voice so you can play with that vocal effect. But that's the core of that. So now that we talked a little bit about what's creature vocalization, I want to go a little bit about the different vocal effects that people can actually use. Right? And also the notion of extreme voices. Lucky for all of you and for me as well, I was in Italy at the beginning of beautiful Rome at the beginning of the year, and I work with someone called Dr. Enrico De Lorenzo, which is what we call in Italy a phoniatrician, but here it's a laryngologist, like the way we call them. But he also happened to be not only an amazing laryngologist, also he published study on extreme voices, but he's also a death metal vocalist as well. So for me, he's like the final boss in his field. There's no one more knowledgeable about extreme voices and raw vocal effect because not only he's a doctor, he's an actual practitioner of the craft. So he understands, and he was looking at all the footage, because you have footage to actually show you about the different vocal effect. Because that's the thing. It's sometimes it involves highly complex combination of vocal effect. So before sharing, I'm just gonna dive a little bit more into extreme voices, and then I'll share when I'm in the vicinity of the anatomical part for sound production for extreme voices. So when we talk about extreme voices, you know, and proper voice care, it seems a little incompatible when you try to put them in the same sentence, right? For a lot of people, when they think extreme voices and proper voice care, like it's like trying to solve an impossible equation, right? Because even today, even with everything that we understand, scientifically speaking, of extreme voices, a lot of people, even vocal health specialists, are still considering that self-inflicted vocal abuse. So the way you approach self-inflicted vocal abuse is usually you try to mitigate the symptom of vocal fatigue and vocal stress. That's how most people, still today with all the science, consider extreme voices or rough vocal effect, right? The thing is, if you ask any rock or metal vocalists how they got good at that, they got good by practicing it. So for us, it is a skill to acquire, not a problem to mitigate.
It sounds like being a stunt person. Like a normal person would say, that's crazy, but a stunt person knows how to do it well and make it sound
guess
good.
How when people ask me what job I do, The answer that I give is I'm a vocal stunt performer.
Oh, there you go.
Why? Because, it's like in movie. You wouldn't take someone who is not prepared, not trained to do stunt. Right?
Mhm.
It seems like today it's like, no, you need highly trained people who can do that kind of thing. The problem in voiceover is that there's no clear training. And they hire you and they think you can do it, and you think you can do it, and you go in there. Like, I've heard hundreds of horror stories about people losing their voice, having voice problem because of extreme voices. But the thing is, again, the approach for us and for people who are been just focusing on that for years and years is that it is a skill to acquire. You don't get good at vocal distortion by avoiding it. Even lazy people practices laziness, right, to be good at that. so for me, avoiding, now of course there's a certain amount of vocal stress but the thing is, the reason why I'm still vocally healthy, I believe, and other people that have been working with me are still vocally healthy, is because we have little helpers in the vocal tract. So we use other mechanism to create the vocal effect other than the vocal folds, right? Regular vocal effect, rough vocal effect, but because there's been science research on extreme voices and rough vocal effects since the at the end of the 90s. So when I'm talking about rough vocal effect, I'm talking about those vocal effects according to the science done by the Complete Vocal Institute in Copenhagen, who did some of the most extensive research on rough vocal effect in extreme voices. And I talk about extreme vocal effect, but I'll clarify that in a few seconds. So regular vocal effect, what are they? They're usually really easily sustainable. Like you don't need an extensive amount of training. It doesn't necessitate a high volume, so high projection, high intensity. It rarely triggers discomfort reflexes. Like the go-to discomfort reflexes for 99.9% of the people is that when you try something new with your voice, you're coughing. Right? Because coughing is a built-in defense mechanism when there's a perceived threat to your voice. Or when your vocal tract doesn't know what you're doing, so it's like, ah! So there's a red alarm in the brain, and like, what to do, cough. So when people talk about coughing is bad, I could say that there's two different kinds of cough. The bad one, which lingers after you're coughing, and the one that happens when you're actually trying something new. So for me, it's very different. So it's a low level of vocal stress for beginners. It rarely involves vocal distortion. I'm going to give you 3 examples of that, because I sometimes voice beautiful and cute creature. I don't always voice demon and zombies and, dragons. Something called uvula vibration, right? So uvula vibration, if you know the story behind the Predator click sound, well, you know that it's coming from a voice actor who actually was doing that. That is the uvula, the little thing in the back of the throat that is actually moving. And we can do it like this. I could go higher, and it's not the tongue, I'm not cheating. So for some people, they could do tongue trill. It sounds different, right? So uvula vibration, it's not tiring, because that's the thing, it doesn't involve the vocal folds. When I do, there's no vocal folds in there. So I can do that for a long period of time. But also, the only thing that might happen is that after a while, the area, like let's say if I have to do that for 2 hours, the area around the uvula sometimes will become a little bit desensitized. Mostly because like it's a little still shaking and it's not used to shake like that. So at some point, it's going to be a little bit harder to control. But that's it. And for those who are knowledgeable also about the Donald Duck, what I call the Donald Duck cheek effect, like that, this is basically trapping hair in the back of your cheek. So again, this is easily sustainable and it's not vocally stressing. So there's a few vocal effects that for me I classify in regular vocal effect, right? But then after that, it goes to rough vocal effect. And again, I'm linking that to the scientific studies of the Complete Vocal Institute because they've been doing studies for like quite a while. So usually, the way that I classify rough vocal effect is that they are simple effect, that using mostly a second source of vibration. Because it's possible to have a simple voice effect on the vocal fold, but because it will combine two mechanisms. The mechanism you're using for regular speech, of the regular pitch, ha, and then ah, and then you're using another part of the vocal fold to create the vocal effect. So this is called simple effect. Or you can use ventricular fold. Now I'm not going lower with my voice. I'm not going So this is the natural pitch that I'm using into creating the sound. But by using ventricular fold, I can create subharmonic. So frequencies that are lower than the note that I'm using. Right? Or you can use Aryepiglottis fold as well. Mostly known as the vocal effect used by jazz singer, growling. So, but I use something else as a vocal fold to create that vocal effect. Usually, to make it sustainable, it requires years of training to make them sustainable for rough vocal effect. It usually necessitates medium to high volume. Where not properly trained, it often triggers discomfort reflexes. So you're going to be coughing and feeling dry. There's a moderate level of vocal stress for beginners. And it, again, for those, it always involves an element of vocal distortion. Like things that we call creaking, which is basically, yeah, something just a vocal effect done on vocal folds. So if you look at the scientific literature in the Complete Vocal Institute, this is called creaking. Now there's grunting, which involves ventricular fold. Another way you can produce sound with ventricular fold is by doing Tibetan voice technique. Now most people will think that I'm singing low. If I take out ventricular folds, so it's a magic trick. I give people the impression that I'm singing low, but I'm not. I'm using something else. So this is basically what we call a grunt bass vibration, ventricular folds, but for throat singing. Or there's something called growling, like I just did, using Aryepiglottis fold to create a vocal effect. So this is the way that I classify rough vocal effect. And then there's extreme vocal effect. Ooh, scary. And they're more complex effect, meaning that sometimes there's many sources of vibration that are contributing to the voice effect, right? I'm going to give an example because it's funny. For me, the notion of extreme, like the more you train, the less extreme a voice technique becomes, right? And when we were chatting before the start of this, you know, a lot of people consider extreme voices like when they have to do "get down, grenade." This is what I have for breakfast because I'm trained, right? So the notion of something being extreme changes depending on the training. What is extreme for me is the level of control that we have over the different parts of our vocal tract. So it's an extreme amount of control. Not extreme because of the intensity necessarily, but extreme because it requires years of training to be able to control that specifically. Because sometimes it's a combination of different things. So when we go to extreme vocal effect, if you're not trained, it will trigger discomfort reflexes. It's a high level of vocal stress for beginners. It always involves vocal distortion, except for whisper. Because I've been training for extreme voices for 36 years, right? But if I have to do whisper sound, like, hey, if I have to do this, like no amount of training gave me an edge with whisper sound. I'm going to do them for like 15, 20, 25 minutes and I'm done. And I'm pretty sure that if you experience that as a voice talent for A video game recording, that's the same amount of time. So there's like, for me, there's no training for whisper. Like even after all those years, like it's still difficult for me to do those. So I put them in the extreme categories. So the difference is for, let's say, for raw vocal effect, if you listen to what people from Complete Vocal Institute consider a grunt, whoa, 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 whoa. When I do it in a death metal voice, now I'm going to get away from the microphone, it's more something like... So the coordination and the complexity of the combination, or a little bit more than the grunt from the CVT that I just did. You have what we call fry scream. So because there's a lot of people that confuses fry scream between being based on vocal fry, because for me real fry scream is only based on vocal distortion on the vocal folds. So I put it in there, but some people think that fry screaming is something else, because sometimes it also involves ventricular folds vibration. Sometimes it's even a hybrid between the ventricular folds and the vocal folds. Inhale sound. We can produce inhale sound by inhaling. So you know the clicker. If you know the clicker sound, some people can actually produce a click by exhaling. Some other people can actually produce a click by inhaling. Epiglottis vibration, and I'll show you. The epiglottis, it's weird, but we can actually make it move. If I do... That's actually the epiglottis opening and closing really fast. I can have partial opening of the epiglottis and use that to enunciate.
Hey, hello. I can actually use that vocal effect to create this voice.
So it's partial vibration, because it's difficult, if I want to enunciate, to do the other one, which sounds grosser than when I'm actually using that. And there's something that we call polyphonic splitting, or it could be called decoupling. It's basically producing a whistle tone over vocal distortion on vocal folds. So it sounds like... So you have a little whistle tone over woo. When I do that, I got dizzy. Sorry, because I did a 4-hour workshop yesterday and a 2 hours recording session. So I'm like, I'm recovering from those. So this is the way that I classify the different types of vocal effect. So in singing, when we just look at singing, what is considered to be extreme voices or raw vocal effect is basically production of glottic, meaning on the vocal folds, and supraglottic distortion, meaning above the vocal folds. Right? So we're using other structure than the vocal fold to create the vocal effect. It's a production of aperiodic noise, of vibration. When I do a pitch, if you were to analyze it on a spectrograph, you would see there's, a single note that is there. When we produce aperiodic vibration, meaning the vibration pattern is not synchronized, it's going to be chaotic. Right? When I use, for example, ventricular folds for throat singing, my subharmonic, when I do that, it's very clear, because the pattern of the ventricular fold vibration is synchronized. It's periodical. This is why I can create a very precise subharmonic. But if I change the vibration pattern and I go into aperiodic, I go from So now if you were to look at ventricular fold vibration, it's a little bit more chaotic. There's a production of subharmonic, like I just said, which generate basically their own harmonic series. Hence, there's an increased production of overtone. And if you don't know what's overtone singing, well, if you listen to Tuvan music, like when people go... Sorry, I have to hear myself when I do that, because it's hard with headphones. Or without... So I'm producing overtones. So basically I'm isolating a frequency in the sound that I'm producing, and I'm amplifying that. And there's medium to high volume. So that's basically the way that we classify. And like I explained, depending on your amount of training, like the more you train, the less extreme a vocal technique will become, because you're actually training for that. So vocal anatomy and sound production, right? I explained that a little bit, but just to give a summary of that, vocal folds, we can produce creaking, ingressive sound, so inhale, and polyphonic splitting, producing a whistle tone over vocal distortion. Ventricular folds, and now you can see where they are placed. And just to tell you, this is a view from above, right? This is this is a view from above, and in the back here of the image, this is the back of your throat. This is the front. So this is the back, and this is the front. So ventricular folds, they seem to be placed on the side, but it's really like you have to think about 3D. But they are a little over to the side. Aryepiglottis fold. Now this is a drawing because I couldn't find a good image, so I had to rely on the drawing on aryepiglottis fold. But you can see these are the vocal folds, ventricular folds, arytenoid cartilages, and just right there, aryepiglottis fold. And this is in the scientific literature called is usually called growling. Uvula, like I was talking, the little thing in the back of the throat that we can actually use. Soft palate tissue. Now this is something else. You can actually create distortion with tissue in the back of the soft palate. Like when people do most zombie sound, like that. Most people think that I'm using vocal folds to produce that sound. I'm not. Because I know, because we scoped it, but because the feeling is different. I can feel that it's a little behind the uvula, you know, in the vocal tract. And like I'm going to show you, if I put a pitch in the sound, meaning if I involve vocal fold vibration, you will hear the difference. So I'm going to start by doing the sound without pitch, and then I'm going to start a pitch, meaning I'm going to start vocal fold activation. So when you hear a pitch, it's because I'm involving vocal fold. When I take the pitch out, I'm removing vocal fold vibration. So it's being created somewhere else in the vocal tract, and it's basically soft palate tissue because they extend to the soft palate to a little behind. So that's what I use to create this. So I have a few video. This is my own instrument, and unfortunately it's not the stroboscopic footage, but you will see this is when I produce an inhale sound. So the thing is with that, you can see how close the vocal folds are, right? They are mostly fully adduct, meaning that they're mostly like really close to one another. So when you produce inhale sound, it's basically on the vocal fold. There's no other element that can be activated in the vocal tract when you produce those. So being done on the vocal fold, it's like reverse fry. You know, when people do vocal fry, if you were to look with a camera at the movement, it's basically the same thing but reverse. So this is what happened. And inhale sound have a particularity to dry out your voice faster. And we could see the effect of that, but when we did it at some point, my friend laryngologist asked me to do some throat singing to bring back the mucus and the saliva on the vocal fold, because it was drying out my vocal fold faster. So this is ingressive sound. This is I think this is clicking sound, and you will see that the vocal folds are even closer because it's still inhale, it's still ingressive sound, but it's clicking. So if we looked at inhale before, you can see there's still a little space in between the vocal folds. Now with clicking, they're mostly close to one another, and the way we produce click, it's like the vocal folds are doing Morse code. tick, 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 tick. They're really close to one another, and they're like tick, 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 tick. But the level of adduction is way more, so meaning the vocal folds are closer to one another when you produce clicking sound. So ingressive sound, it's on vocal folds only. It's a reverse movement, so we're producing sound by inhaling. Vocal folds are adduct almost fully to fully, depending on the technique, and we can produce clicking sound. So that's some effect on the vocal fold. Now, what about ventricular folds?
Again, longer. Okay.
I'm going to play it again and I'm going to pause it because...
Again, longer.
Okay, so what you see here are actually aryepiglottic cartilages, right? So that's the thing with some vocal effect. And this is why there's no specific recipe, because some people use different strategy to produce a similar sound. And I'm going to explain that right after. But what you see here, there's a lot of aryepiglottic, what we call drumming or vibration. It uses ventricular fold, but you see, we don't see the vocal folds. Everything is what we call laryngeal compression. Like the larynx is like that. So it's of course it's not like when people try it for the first time, it's not comfortable, because instead of like producing sound really open, like in opera, like with some time we squeeze a little bit to produce those sounds. So this is my friend Tony, vocal fold and ventricular fold actually. And these are mine. So I'm actually doing a sound, but I'm thinking that with this one I'm talking. Oh yeah, yeah. Again, we barely see the vocal folds. We see a lot of mucus because I'm really mucusy. I apologize for that, but for me that's beautiful. That's my own instrument, so I love it. And you can see there's a little bit of vibration, but it's really considered, compared to the sound before, like the level of intensity, like it's really reduced, right? It's very almost subtle. And then we can use, of course, ventricular fold and articulate with it and enunciate.
No, we will not hurt them.
Okay, again.
No, we will not hurt them.
So again, see, you almost don't see the vocal folds. You can see that ventricular folds are getting closer, and I use them to create the vocal effect. So ventricular fold distortion, well, it's done on ventricular fold, but like I explained, some people adopt sometimes different strategies to produce an almost similar sound. So sometimes it's a combination. For some people, like we see my friend Tony, it's ventricular fold and aryepiglottic cartilages. I've seen other people use ventricular fold, Aryepiglottis fold, and aryepiglottic cartilages in the way that they are producing the sound. So ventricular fold can be used as a secondary source of vibration distortion. And the thing is, I've learned how to activate ventricular folds in different range. Right? And the thing, because we use something else than the vocal folds, I do believe that. It's an hypothesis of me and my colleagues. But because we use something else than the vocal fold to create the vocal effect, this is, I think, one of the reasons why we are still vocally healthy to this day. Because the stress, instead of concentrating just on the vocal fold and asking basically the vocal fold to do two jobs, the pitch and the vocal distortion, we actually give the role of vocal distortion to something else above in the vocal track. So I do believe that it's probably less vocally stressing on the vocal folds just because of that. And this, I was talking about epiglottis vibration. Yeah, I'm just going to show it. I know it's not a pretty sight, and just to remind you, it's also called a sphincter, because we have many sphincter in our body. This is one of them. And it's what we could call an extreme laryngeal compression. Everything is closed down, we don't see anything, just like, and it's vibrating. And there's a lot of mucus, right? But mucus is part of sometimes what we use to create different sound. It's an enhancement. Right, so epiglottis vibration, the epiglottis is moving back and forth, and like I've shown, we can use it to enunciate. And this is uvula vibration.
Cute aliens.
So I'm going to play it again. Please focus on one thing. Yeah. See how narrow the space is between the back of my tongue and my soft palate? Like there's barely anything around, right? The uvula is going right into that little hole. There's a little space, you know, on the side, but that's basically... Because the thing is, uvula doesn't vibrate on its own. Uvula needs help in order to be able to do that. And the way to help it is to concentrate the flow of air directly on it. So this is why usually when I ask people to try and activate that vocal effect, it's usually easier when they do a high note. Why? Because naturally the back of the tongue will be raised, so it will be closer to the soft palate. And you see that kind of reduced space, and this is where you can activate. Of course, after that, it's a little bit more difficult to maintain that position and to make it move. I can make it move without that distance, but I'm not going to be able to control it for long. Let's say that I do a crow. This is uvula vibrating, but I cannot control it because it's a very wide open space. Right? So I can make it move, but not as long and control that when there's a reduced space between the back of the tongue and the soft palate. So, like we discussed, techniques can involve vocal fold, ventricular fold, anterior cartilages, Aryepiglottis fold, uvula, epiglottis, tissue in the back of the soft palate, or some different combination. Techniques can combine different mechanisms. Mechanism involved producing a very specific vocal effect might slightly differ from person to person. This is why, and we were talking about that, there's not one good approach to that, because sometimes people will adopt different strategies. All techniques necessitate training, and most techniques have a discomfort phase, and this is really important, which fades away with training. Now, a little story about discomfort. I was able to do Tibetan throat singing. Whoa, very relaxed, whoa. And when I met people from Tuva and Mongolia, they were actually doing a kind of throat singing that is higher. And for the life of me, I was not able to do that specifically. And then I was lucky enough to meet Kaigal Kovalig, which is the lead singer of a band called Un Urtu. And he was playing in Montreal, and I was at a party with him after the show, and I asked him to teach me. And he started to sing right next to me. And when I started to do the sound, I was able to do it, but it made me cough. So the thing is, was I coughing because I was doing the wrong voice technique? No, because if you listen, and you listen to what they're doing, this is the exact same sound. The exact same sound. What I was lacking was training. Because if you listen a little bit when I go, ooh, you can almost hear the speed of vibration. And when I go higher, you know, it's like if you look at the blades of a clipper, it goes fast, right? So I was not trained for the speed of vibration of my ventricular folds, right? And then when I started to train, I got comfortable, I was no longer coughing. But it's like anything, any kind of training. If you go to the gym and you start training, is it going to be comfortable? No, and that's the thing in voice acting. A lot of people are freaked out about discomfort because it's your job, right? You're working with your voice, so immediately you'll go to like, oh no, it's not comfortable, I'm not doing it. But if you think in terms of training, again, if you think about vocal distortion and rub vocal effect and extreme voices as a skill to acquire, the only way to get good at it is to train. So you will have to go, like any kind of physical training, through a discomfort phase for everything. And technically it would fade away over time, right? And the thing is, even today I'm still coughing sometimes, but I don't have any residual discomfort from me coughing. Sometimes it's just it triggers and I'm good to go. After that, I don't have any problem, right? So really quickly, and let me know, because I'm, like I explained to you, Tish and Kelsey, I'm chatty. I tend to give more than what people. But just so you know what I'm talking about, because we have roughly 45, 50 minutes, right? Plus question at the end. But this is usually part of a 9-hour presentation. 3 hours on creature voice acting, 3 hours on vocal stunt work and the science behind it, and 3 hours on emotes and action and a vowel and consonant display. How do you keep in touch with myself? And or what I do? Basically, we have a website, themonsterfactory.com. Be aware, there's another Monster Factory in the state, which is a wrestling school. So if you see people wrestling, that's not it. We wrestle, but not the same way, right? We wrestle with stuff in a vocal track. So that's one thing. We have a YouTube channel, The Monster Factory, with many videos of what we do. And just by the way, a teaser, there's going to be a 1 hour, 20-minute video for free on vocal health with a voice therapist that I hired to do. So it's going to be on our YouTube channel in probably 2 to 3 weeks. So just to tell you that. So there's going to be more in-depth talk about vocal health in there. I'm going to call it Twitter. I don't like X, but I'm on Twitter. It's De Monstre. It's in French. De Monstre. I'm on Instagram, but I'm a lot active on LinkedIn as well. And I know that many voice talent are too, so you can get a hold of me there. And basically, you can send me an email to my website also, because there's an email there. So that's the way to get in touch with me.
Excellent. And you teach classes, you do coaching. How do you usually work with people?
Well, that's the thing. On the website, you can actually buy a one-on-one lesson for an hour, or you can buy a pack for 5 hours, depending on the amount of training that you. But yeah, it's possible through the website, and with the help of PayPal, like, we can do a lot of things today.
Excellent. And then in terms of the dojo, these events, Get to Know V.O is always the third Wednesday of the month. Ask the Sensei is our free Q&A, is the first Wednesday of the month. And wherever you are on your journey, we are basically designed to go from I don't know to working pro, meet you where you are, and take off from there. So we have our last session of our intro course, which is called You Should Do Voiceover Launchpad and Workouts, where we start everything. I was just saying to Sebastien at the beginning, before everyone came on, one of the lessons that is included from the very beginning of your journey at the dojo is vocal health, is as part of the most important. And then if you are already if you're anywhere on your journey, we'll start there. If you're already a working pro, our nth degree Career Catapult Intensive is coming up in November. This is a 3-day super focused event. Think of it like going to a conference with 20 people focused and meeting and working with agents for 3 hours at the end. So if you're interested in that. And then our Mystery to Mastery program is everywhere in between. And we'd love to have you get on my calendar. And I'd love to talk with you and hear where you're at and where you'd like to be. But we are here for that journey. And yeah, so that's how you keep in touch with. I think Kelsey has put that all in the chat. So do hop on my calendar and would love to meet you. And I think that is it. And if you have to roll, we are recording. So everyone who's registered will get a replay, so you can catch it on after we're done. And yeah, I think we can get back to it. If you have to roll, thank you for being here, and let us know what questions or what O's you have after you take it in. So let's jump back
Tish,
in now. Back to
really quick.
Yeah.
We also have our pro fight club. And
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Our working pro. Tish, I think you explain it better.
Yeah. So, thank you. This is why it takes a village. Part of our working pro division is the nth degree, and then we also have our VO Dojo Pro Fight Club, which is working pro workout that brings together top-notch talent with the decision makers who hire us in all different genres. So as working pros, as people who are on the journey to become working pros, there's a moment where we press the button to send our auditions, and it goes out into the universe, and we don't know what happens. In Fight Club, it's we make that audition process transparent, what happens every step of the way. So it is a workout, and it's also really revealing what happens in that particular decision maker's audition process. It is invaluable. Players, demo, repped, and booking is the requirement. You can fill out an application to get on the Fight Club roster, and everybody is welcome to come and buy a spectator seat. So who's coming up, Kelsey?
We
do we have
have
that?
JJ Jurgens, promo with JJ Jurgens, who is the longtime, I think, producer for the CBS promo. And then
She's
we
amazing.
also have Steve Pogak, and he is he's been working with Sirius XM. I think he's like the marketing producer.
Yeah,
there,
he's everybody. He shows everything about getting what is required to get into that realm, that the division of diversifying your portfolio. So, yeah. So check it all out, guys. Cool. Thanks, Kels. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. So where are we, Sebastian?
Yeah, I'm glad it's recorded because you can listen again to my unbridled enthusiasm about.
Yeah, I think it's going to be reverberating throughout all the folds of our body. It's
about
contagious.
creature vocalization. So really quickly, if when we're talking about extreme voices, like there's actually scientific studies about it. Like I'm not going to talk about because there are 50 plus scientific studies in singing about extreme voices. Some of the most major one was done by Katrin Sedolin of the Complete Vocal Institute in 2008, 2013, 2018, and 2022. And for me, the most interesting one comes from the 2022 scientific studies because it involves 32 healthy professional singers. But they have done the study over 14 years. Because if you want to prove sustainability for anything, like if you only take one picture in time, is it going to give you an accurate vision of how something can be sustainable? No. You need to take a picture every year for a long period of time to see if something is actually sustainable. And this one, again, has been done over 14 years. And that's the amazing thing. The conclusion, basically, the findings suggest that control supraglottic narrowing and techniques to allow for supraglottic structure to engage in vibration as an additional source can be performed sustainable and in a healthy manner if performed with correct vocal technique. The thing is, I have to say that having a correct vocal technique doesn't negate the risk. It diminishes it, right? Because sometimes I see people talking about, oh, he has the correct vocal technique, so there's no chance in hell that person is going to get hurt. Well, if you think about what are the most trained people in sport, Olympic athletes, they know the technique. Does that prevent them from being injured? No, it does not. So training diminishes the risk. But there's no such thing as the perfect, correct vocal technique that's going to allow you to do everything safely. And this is another word that I don't use a lot, safe and safely, because it implies you're never going to have any problem. There are safer approaches to learn rough vocal effect. But after that, it's mostly based on your own sensation and your level of comfort, right? So this is another interesting study about metal vocalists. Like I said, it's still being perceived as self-inflicted vocal abuse. They did a study with 74 of them. The percentage of vocal dysphonia, meaning problem that some people have, in the vocal tract was 12.2%. Now, if you look at similar studies in classical singing and in other form of singing, like the prevalence of dysphonia is around the same. So why is it around the same when this is considered to be extreme and vocally stressing? It should be higher, right? And even the study, the scientists were a little baffled by, like they were waiting for more people suffering from from this the vocal dysphonia in extreme voices. So now I'm gonna go over that training method real quick. Yeah, to approach when people talk about vocal health and training method or whatever regarding extreme voices. In voice acting, we hear a lot about general voice care, of course, important, but also about semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. Humming, lip trill, strophonation, right? This is usually exercises for warm-up and cool-down. The problem is, even if you learn how to do them correctly, it doesn't teach you how to activate and sustain vocal distortion. It's to mitigate the effect of vocal stress, but it doesn't teach you how to do it properly, right? As in extreme voices in singing, we learn to isolate and activate the different mechanisms to gain control and to actually have more comfort and sustainability. But the thing is, we practice vocal distortion on a weekly, monthly basis for years. So this is not something we try to avoid, right? This is something that we get good at by doing it, not by avoiding it. Now, I'm going to show you something real quick. All right, I'm going to stop. But I love it. This is a friend of mine, Flo. So this, I could call that extreme drumming. And I'm sure you would all agree with me. It's extreme drumming. He goes super fast. He's one of the fastest drummers on the planet. When we talk about how to train or warm up and cool down, like warm up and cool down for the body would mean that you stretch, you have massage and things like that, right? Do you think that he got this good by just stretching and doing warm up and cool down? No, he trained. And most of the approach in voice acting, when we talk about extreme voices, they're talking about warm up and cool down, but they're not talking about the actual training. And I'm pretty sure that all the warm up and the cool down in the world wouldn't help for him to train like he is trained to be that precise with his whole body, basically, to do extreme drumming, right? So the thing is, when people talk about semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, and that's, because now I see more and more vocal coach talking about extreme voices and SOVTE, semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, mostly strophonation. So of course, I'm not denying that there's a scientific consensus of the benefit of SOVT in the treatment of vocal dysphonia, but also in the improvement of vocal performance, particularly in the context of fatigue prevention and recovery. But if you look at the study, they're mostly for regular voice usage, not extreme voices, right? The thing is that, first of all, there's many types of SOVTE, like I explained, a humming, lip trill, sometimes with a kazoo, strophonation, or the most popular. So in the last 10, 15 years, the democratization of vocal pedagogy to the development of tutorial on social networks, they have popularized many of them, which now we see being used without any discernment. Like if you want to go on YouTube and you just type semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, you're going to have 10,000 video with different sizes of draw, different amount of water, and different take on it. But in addition, in recent years, we have been witnessing the rise of pedagogical discourse that has to inform these exercises to the point of presenting them as the ultimate and only means of developing a vocal technique, a healthy vocal technique. However, this is not true. Exercise using straw, for example, have developed spectacularly. However, the scientific literature, if it makes it possible to establish the benefit of these devices, notes that it is not suitable for all singers. In any case, a pedagogical device must always be adapted to the specific case of the person to whom it is offered. So, in the case of extreme vocal effect, there are currently not enough studies to certify the effectiveness of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. This does not mean that we cannot use them profitably. It simply means that the pedagogy of vocal effect is still insufficiently evaluated, and the vocal science has not painted the landscape in its entirety. So it would therefore be inaccurate to claim, for example, that the practice of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises would be sufficient to balance the musculature of singers, vocalists, and voice talent using extreme voices. Like I say, it can be used, and it's been proven, for regular voice usage, not for extreme voices. And if we look, for example, at one scientific, because just to tell you, when I did that presentation, we have reviewed 54 scientific studies about semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. And funnily enough, a third of them, mostly using straw phonation, because it probably wasn't done properly. Usually when you use straw phonation, for those who don't know about it, it sends back pressure on the vocal folds, so the vocal folds vibrate more easily with less effort, right? So technically, when you do them, you know, you would perceive, if you were to put a camera down there, you would be able to perceive physiological changes, but also acoustical changes. And like, let's say you were to perform the sound, it would be brighter, clearer, etc. A third of the 54 scientific studies we reviewed only had self-perceptual improvement, meaning that you do those exercises, you feel good about it, so your self-perceptual assessment increase. Like, let's say before you feel 4 out of 10, and then you do those exercises, now you feel 8 out of 10, right? But if you look at the actual physiological and acoustical changes, there are none. The thing is, I don't deny the benefit of being in a good headspace, right? Because voice work is not only about vocal fold and the vocal tract, it's about being in a good headspace. I always say that even if it doesn't work really for what it is intended, at least if it puts yourself in a good place in your mind, keep doing it. Because again, voice work is not only about the voice, the vocal fold, it's also about where you are in your mind. Are you comfortable, right? So I would still suggest to do them. But the thing is, the study that I'm going to talk about was done on semi-occluded vocal tract exercises as morning vocal warm-up, right? And they basically say that, if you look at the conclusion, the study revealed that these strategies are not universally successful, and clinicians should recommend them only after assessing their effectiveness for the client. Clinicians need to be custom tailoring these exercises for their client's goal and proclivities. Another consideration is the importance of teaching proper SOVTE technique so it is done correctly without added tension. Even blowing bubbles in a cup of water with phonation can be done poorly, in some cases yielding counterproductive results. Every level of proprioception, every level of proficiency that we have with all our voices are different. But the thing is, people are always looking for an answer, for a solution, for a one-size-fits-all solution. And I don't agree with that. Because, again, if you look at all the differences that we have, even if we do have mostly all the same parts with tiny differences, there's not one approach that is the approach. There's many road to go to Rome, like the old saying says, right? And that's the thing. For semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, like usually the way I recommend them, it's not through a vocal coach. Go see a voice therapist. Go see a laryngologist. They are the one fully equipped to actually tailor-made this for you and look at what your needs are, and after that tell you what to do, right? Because there are different sizes of straw, different amount of water that can have an effect on your vocal folds. So that you need to play around with that, and you need to do it with someone knowledgeable. And I tend to think that even vocal coaches are amazing. Voice therapists and laryngologists are way more qualified to do that. So I usually don't listen to vocal coach talking about straw phonation. I listen to voice therapists and laryngologists. I'm just putting it out there. So the thing is, again, how do you train for that? How do you train for extreme voices? Do you train yourself by avoiding it or doing exercises that are one-size-fits-all approach? Again, sometimes we have different strategies to produce different sound. So the thing is to find a vocal coach who is an actual practitioner, but that has also knowledge about vocal anatomy and about the science and vocal pedagogy. And there are very few people in the world who have both sides, who are actual practitioner, who are understanding the sensation and can explain them to you, but also understand vocal anatomy and vocal pedagogy. Why? Because if you go on YouTube and you try to learn about extreme voices, there's a load of video that are not scientifically accurate, first, or that give you the impression that if you don't perform the sound the way they're doing, you're not good. which is, it's not, there's no scale. Like there's a lot of video that, oh, wow, it seems so easy. And when you try that, it's not that easy and you're wondering why, because it doesn't explain to you. Video doesn't provide feedback. And you need feedback. Do you need a vocal coach to learn how to do those sounds? No. Why? Because from 1989 to 2000 something, there was no video tutorial and no nothing about that, and people still learn how to do those sounds. Having a vocal coach would just accelerate the process of you learning that, but you don't need, because I've seen a video saying, like, this is dangerous. You have to learn that with a specialized vocal coach. And I'm not, even though I'm a vocal coach, I'm not all for vocal coach dependency. This is what I call it. Where you depend on everything on vocal coaches. Like, there's a fair amount of stuff that you can actually learn by yourself, right? And again, there's a very few people that are actually good at that. And again, please don't go on YouTube, because even if a video has millions of views, it doesn't mean that it's accurate. Like, we don't choose a doctor because of the number of likes he has on Instagram. Right?
Right.
For me, it's the same. It's not the number of views or likes on a video on YouTube that, is a stamp of approval in terms of vocal science and vocal pedagogy.
Yeah.
There's a very few people, again, that I can recommend for that, but you know how to reach me. So if you want to train with someone that I think is knowledgeable, people that I deem knowledgeable with that, let me know. Send me a message, preferably through the website if possible, because following social media can be a nightmare sometime. So yeah.
Right. And at the dojo, our vocal sensei, Faith Rumor, is a sextuple threat in terms of she's a singer-songwriter herself. She's a singing coach. She's a vocal coach. She also has speech pathology background. So as part of our training, in addition to making it part of the very beginning, throughout the program, people do one-on-one assessments with Faith, and then we're always working with her with those two things in mind. So it's great to hear that. It's great to hear that confirmation, Sebastien, of that's a way to approach it, and the whole idea of everybody understanding how unique and individual each of our instruments are is really important.
And this is crucial. This is why, again, people advocating for a one-size-fits-all approach. I have an ethical and moral problem with that, because I know for not to be true. And in all the years, because I've been a vocal coach for 16 years now, and I work with people that have been doing extreme vocal coaching for 10 to 15 years too, and we all agree on this. It's a different road. It takes sometime longer, sometimes shorter time. We can guide you on the mountain of vocal distortion and help you accelerate how you can learn that. But again, people have been learning those sounds without vocal coach for decades and decades. But we can help to make it the process a little bit faster.
Without being chased by a bear or torn apart by a zombie.
Yes, exactly. As humanly safely as possible.
Here's a good way to learn.
Exactly. Yeah, someone was mentioning Mary Z in the comment. Mary Z is actually one who has a channel called Voice Hack. That is one that I absolutely deem professional and responsible. With our student. But there's a few people. There's probably a dozen of people in the world who combine both practical experience and knowledge about vocal anatomy and vocal science and vocal pedagogy.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, this has been amazing. Special. Are we at the Q&A part?
Yeah.
Awesome. This is fantastic.
I could go another hour.
No, it's great.
But I think
great.
For the intent purposes of this session, I'm way more. I'm willing to take a few questions, of course.
Yeah, excellent. I have a question, because I'm a trained.
Why is Sebastien so cool? Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it just comes naturally. I have a question. As a trained, there's lots of questions that are packed up, and so we'll have Kelsey. We'll call y'all in. But let's see. So as I'm a trained opera singer, so I know a lot about using my voice for singing. Um, is there, you spoke about and showed us, um, you showed us and we heard um, how to access these 3 or 4 different ways that we calibrate our voice. Are there any like touchstones or like ways that like here's a thing you can do to feel it so we can start practicing and know like, oh, that's my vocal, oh, that's my epiglottis, oh, that's like how would you, is in a nutshell, is there a way to
There's
access that?
absolutely, and the thing is, the starting point, like I explained, it's not a one size fits all approach. Is never the same.
Right, right,
for,
right.
for some people. So let's say that I'm trying to teach ventricular fold activation. Usually I start with the basic sigh, which is, when someone is boring, you just push a little hair and go, like, so there's a little, yeah, like you just did. So when you do that, you actually activate ventricular folds. But the thing is,
good.
with that amount of pressure, sometimes people can also activate Aryepiglottis fold. So it's hard to know there if you're actually activating the same thing, because you could be doing and Epiglottis fold, ventricular fold. The sound is almost similar, but it's not. It's not the same mechanism. So that can work for some people. For some other people, like sometime I ask, okay, pretend you're a racing car. Now you activate ventricular fold vibration. Sometimes the racing car doesn't work, so I have to rely on other things. So I have to ask them, like, okay, let's pretend you were an alarm clock. Right? You're trying to wake someone up, but the person is not waking up, so the alarm clock gets angry. So that can be another type. So usually there's a few different types of exercises that is going to be called, like I said, the starting point, that you can learn how to activate the different types of vocal effect. And once you find that starting point, you start from there, and then after that you expand.
That's what
you
it is.
expand in different range. But all these exercises, the people don't have the same starting point.
That's so cool, because then you can feel it, because we can see it, we can hear it, but when you can feel, and then you do it naturally. This is when you naturally do it. Yeah, that's super cool. Thank you.
But it's building what we call proprioception, right? The consciousness of your own instrument. So at some point you become really aware of what you do. Because remember, most vocal effects are an add-on to your natural voice. So the amount of control you want to have is, you want to be able to add it and then remove it, add it, remove it, add it, remove it, add it. And when you have that amount of control, like you went over the sensation, you know exactly, you control your instrument, but it's basically sensation based at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
And
sometimes it can be misleading. You're feeling something. A lot of people, when they activate ventricular fold, they feel something on their vocal fold. Because ventricular fold, if you have something above the vocal fold vibrating, it could also create back pressure. So it's going to be weird for the vocal folds. For some people, they feel it there while the thing is happening a little higher.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay, into the Q&A.
I had several.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
No,
Which
don't apologize.
Which one in particular were you?
the blood coughing.
Oh. After you told that story about coughing blood at the end of a session, I asked, do you, having done that now, do you try and take a day off in between sessions, or how do you handle that?
So the thing is, when I started to do that, it was in 2005, my first recording session, and I wanted to impress Ubisoft. And me being a metal vocalist, I was like, a gorilla. Ooh, 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 I can do. So I was like, hey, I can do this 8 hours, right? I can do this 8 hours. I have no problem doing this 8 hours. And I was proven wrong. So basically now, the length of the recording session, or not 8 hours, they are basically from 3 to 4 hours. Sometime minimum 2 hours of doing that. So the thing is, in order, and I've never coughed blood since, just to tell you. That was one time, and that's it. I've learned that 8 hours was too much, really quick.
Not a mistake you make twice, I'm guessing.
No, exactly. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not. But the thing is, it's for me my training method. Like I said, I'm a metal vocalist. Like tonight, I'm going to practice with my band because we have a show and a new album coming out soon. So I regularly practice vocal distortion. But I also have a lot of different devices. I have a mesh nebulizer that I use to send moisture on the vocal folds, because a lot of people think that when you drink water, the water goes on the vocal fold. But the thing is, it doesn't touch the vocal folds. So I use a mesh nebulizer during recording session. When I have a 10-minute break, I put that and I send moisture on the vocal fold with a 0.9 saline solution. I have other tools. And yes, sometimes I do practice straw phonation, but with a really big straw that allow me to scream and to use vocal distortion with this, because it allow me, again, I'm not doubting that SOVT could be beneficial, especially straw phonation for extreme voices. Basically, the science is not there to prove it, but I'm experimenting with that. And I can feel some benefit, as some of my friends are also teaching that. But if you ask any rock or metal vocalist how we got comfortable with vocal distortion, the answer is never going to be never, ever. And even the knowledge of SOVT among metal vocalists is really thin. But guess what? We've been okay, even without that knowledge. So that, but also I have what I call a checkup routine. Every day, I don't necessarily project. Of course, I teach a lot, so I have to do it. But let's say that I didn't have to teach. I have a checkup routine. I go through all the vocal effect, because it's basically building muscle memory, right? Gaining control over your instrument, so that happens over time. So to make sure that I can access a specific vocal effect, all of them, I just go through them every day. And when I do a recording session and I know which type of vocal effect that I'm going to use, when I do warm-up, I work on that specific vocal effect. Not just like I do breathing exercises, of course, because breath management is really important. Because it's always a very precise amount of pressure and airflow and vibration. So you want to be able to be consistent. So this is one of the reasons why most people who had singing lessons, usually when they're asked to perform extreme voices, it's usually easier on them because they have good breath management. Like that's one of the things that when I work sometime with untrained, meaning they're not metal vocalists or rock singer, I can see the difference in between when I ask someone to do certain sound and when I ask someone who is trained. But of course, like being a rock or metal vocalist doesn't make you a voice actor. Some skill are transferable. Being a metal vocalist, I mean, if you ever went to see a metal concert, like if you look at the vocalist and he looks like he wants to kill you, this is called acting. Okay? This is building a persona on stage. So some skill of being a metal vocalist are transferable in the voice acting world. But the thing is, it doesn't make you like instantly a voice actor. You need to work on that, right? And likewise, it's not because you're a voice actor that you know how to scream. That's the same thing. It requires a good amount of training. But yeah, so when I work on, to answer your question, I'm sorry, Casey, I tend to be chatty. I target specifically that vocal effect. So if I'm going to use ventricular folds, I start very gently, because when you go to the gym, are you trying to bench press 250 pounds right off the bat? No, right? So what do? You stretch, you do small weight, and then you do bigger weight. So if you apply that principle to something that vibrates, right? Because we're not talking necessarily about muscle coordination. We're talking about something that vibrates. If you apply that, it means that you're going to slowly increase the speed of vibration.
That's like the drummer, right?
Progressively.
Being able to do faster and faster.
Exactly. So this is how I warm up. I change the speed of vibration of what I will use. But it's not all vocal technique that you need to warm up. Like when I do uvula vibration, do you think I need to warm up my uvula? No.
One moment, I'm warming up my uvula.
Not really. So it's, I could probably take an hour to answer your question. Like, this is a complex combination, like even vocal health, right? Vocal health is not like just here, it's your whole person. And it involves food, it involves nutrition, it involves, like, it's usually highly complex. But for extreme voices, there's nothing that can compare to training for it.
And
right? You can do the amount of warm up and cool down that you want. It's not going to train you for that specifically.
And then I think at this is amazing answer. What did you do when you did hurt your voice? What do you do if you do something
vocal
like
rest?
You sprain it? Zip it.
The sound of silence. There's nothing like this. Is an amazing. First, it's an amazing song. Right. Second, the cover by a metal band is amazing as well. But vocal rest, for me, there's always moment where, well, I shut up when I sleep, or so I think. I hope. But there's always moment where I will forcefully not talk or not produce any sound. But you have to be careful, because if you stop completely, it could have counterproductive effect. So sometimes you still need some time to produce some sound, just so it doesn't go into lock mode. So that's
but
one
not
of the
whisper.
things.
But
Exactly.
not whisper. Right.
Vocal rest, hydratation. Like, I'm going to give you an example. Even sometime, like, I can scream for 4 hours, but if I talk for 4 hours, I get more tired. Right? Because screaming, to me, it's very controlled. Speaking, for me, is not that controlled. It's very instinctive and instinctual, right? So when I go to video game conferences, sometime I talk a lot, blah, 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 and then at some point, if I do, when I can do this, it's because my vocal folds are fine. But if I try to do it, and I have inflammation, I will not be able to reach those high notes, right? Because my vocal folds are going to be inflamed. So now I know that I have damage. Then I start a little bit of humming, lip trills. So I apply what has been proven for the vocal folds. Regular voice users, I try to, it helps a little bit to mitigate the effect of vocal stress. But yeah, again, I could go on and on.
Excellent.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you for your question. I hope the answer helped a little bit.
What do you drink to keep your voice healthy?
No, teacher.
Water.
Cool.
A lot of water, because the hydration of the vocal fold are actually tied to the general hydration of the body. Right? It's not separate. And like I was explaining, when people are drinking water while they're recording because they feel thirsty, it doesn't touch the vocal folds, right? It's good for, what you feel dry in the mouth, it's going to put water in there, but it doesn't touch the vocal fold. So this is why you need a mesh nebulizer to send moisture on the vocal fold. But I drink a lot of water. There's always, even if you read, because we were chatting about Dr. Reena Gupta, which is a laryngologist. She has a website, I think it's Center for Vocal Health, right? The name. She actually has an amazing article, because a lot of people have their little recipe, right? Tea with this, with honey, with lemon. The thing is, lemon, it can actually activate the enzyme that you have in acidic refluxes and make it worse. Again, when I say that everything needs to be tailor-made, it depends on a lot of different factors, right? So for me, I drink water, but a lot of people have their own recipe. But I suggest going on the website for a Center for Vocal Health and looking and reading the article about Dr. Reena Gupta, because she talks about the benefit of some of the things that people are taking. But she also talks about sometimes the counter effect of that. It can be good, but also it can, if you are, it can do something else. But like I explained, sometimes there's no scientific basis on, our little recipe to feel good. But like I said at the beginning, when I was talking about SOVT exercise, and it makes you feel good, better. Even if there's no scientific basis on those, there's a scientific basis on the effect of placebo. So if it makes you feel good, keep doing it.
Excellent. And get an ENT. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I said, have a team, voice therapists, laryngologists. Please Like, this is vital to be surrounded. And I do believe that the talk that Dr. Reena Gupta is going to talk about is build your team. Have people surrounding you when you're doing voice work that are knowledgeable and, are certified.
Right. Yeah. Just like if you are a race car driver, you are the race car driver, but you have your vehicle, and then you have your mechanic and your crew that keeps it all moving forward with you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
But I know that some people, tend to avoid dairy product, coffee. Again, I do believe that there's some science behind that, but it's, I know people who drink coffee and they're fine and they're doing voice work, right? Some people, when you use dairy product, it tend to feel sticky with more mucus, and depending on what you need to do, it might be a problem. If you need to do a zombie with a lot of mucus, like, I would recommend dairy product. But if you're doing something else, well, maybe it's not the right choice of drink for you.
I have a paralyzed vocal cord, so now I have a low, raspy voice. Are there any vocal exercises you recommend, if any, to help give me a higher pitch? And thank you for being with us.
This, again, as a vocal coach, you have to know your limitation. Voice therapist, laryngologist. I'm not qualified. And again, I think, like, knowing what your limits are as a vocal coach and the limit of your expertise, I would recommend a voice therapist or a laryngologist or an ENT doctor for that specifically, because I'm not down there looking at what you have, the amount of paralysis that you have. I know one thing. I know that for some people who have vocal folds or semi-vocal fold paralysis, some of the voice therapists have taught them to use ventricular folds to help them to enunciate, to produce different sound. And I know that ventricular folds therapy is a thing that is not widely known, but that is still known among some voice therapists. One of my teachers, Tran Quan Ai, who actually was a Vietnamese French teacher of throat singing and overtone, he sadly passed away 4 years ago, but he was doing research about the use of ventricular folds in vocal fold paralysis. Because when you, I still need vocal fold, but I can. So this is where the raspy kind of voice comes from. But again, this is out of my field of expertise. So voice therapist, ENT doctor, laryngologist, like, those are the ones who can actually answer that, not me.
Yes, bonjour.
Bonjour.
I really just wanted to say, like, thank you so much. I feel like I've had a complete workshop, and I could just kind of listen to you go on all day. You're just, your passion for your craft is transcendent. Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Well, I think that I'm blessed to have found something that I'm really passionate about, and I will always passionate about the voice, right? About villains and about, but the thing is, this passion comes at a cost also, because when you have a company, what we're talking about, that's with Tish, like, I work 80 hours a week, not only recording, but building, traveling, like, because people don't know about creature vocalization performed by human. Because their go-to is our animal sound libraries, right? So I travel every month. I'm going to Belgium next week to give a conference. Then after that, GainSoundCon, Los Angeles. Then before that, I was in Finland to give a conference. So I talk a lot to audio director, sound designer, voice designer, to tell them, hey, humans are amazing. By the way, because the thing is, animal sound, and I'm not going to open a debate whether they have emotion or not, but I do believe that they have intent, right? Intent behind the sound they're producing. The thing is, in sound design, if you take random sound together with different intent, you never know what's the intent, because you're just listening to the sound. So you put those intent together and you try to create fear. You try to create sadness. You try to create other emotion. This is not how intent works. Intent needs to be at the heart of the performance. In the core, it needs to come from a performer. Right? So I advocate for human in a field where it's mostly sound design and sound libraries. And this is where I'm passionate. When I can make one of them recognize our talent and the way we can do things, and they go from, let's say, being a meat lover to vegan, but I don't want to start a debate on that, but being an animal sound library user to a human user. And that's one of my passions. But also in our field, in metal music, like I said, we're being perceived as self-inflicted vocal abuser. and now it starts to get recognized because of the science, because of a lot of different things. And if you talk to anyone doing metal vocals, like, this is not a way to earn a living. And for once, outside the community of metal music, there's an industry, namely movie and video game too, actually, who recognizes the skill that we have. And for one of the rare occasions of our life as an extreme vocalist, we're getting paid for what we do. Because usually when you do metal music, you invest, it's passion. And of course, you can do passionate things all your life, but it's not going to make a job necessarily. You know, it's going to provide you with a job. So I'm really proud of that the fact that some people can recognize our skill outside of our own community. So this is the reason I'm passionate, is like I am surrounded by amazing people. And I see a few of them. I see Ty, I know Jonathan, we spoke about. Like, I already know people who are amazing at the craft. So when those people gets recognized, you know, and their craft gets recognized, so the passion comes from there also, you know, being recognized for the quality that we have, all the artwork that we spend trying to master those vocal effects.
Right. And the irony of needing humanity to be creature voices is sweet. Sweet irony. Well, it's good.
I do believe that to be a really bad monster, you have to be a really good human.
I love that. That's a good t-shirt. That's a good t-shirt.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like, and I'm shooting a video about that next Friday, but creature, monster, like, if you look at the stories about them, usually they were something else before being a creature. They were something good before turning to something bad, right? Even zombies, they were. So for me, creature are always looking at a chance of redemption in some part of them, right? And who best to give them that redemption than people who actually love them? That's that's their only chance at redemption. And who can love more those creature and monsters than those who lend their voice to them?
That's profound. Yeah.
I had a lot of time to think about.
No, it's good. It's the heart. So,
But yeah. So it's kind of funny to say humans are the best monsters, but yeah.
Denver wants to know your book/article/YouTube recommendations.
Like I said, I wouldn't recommend YouTube too much. There's again, in terms of learning extreme vocal effect or raw vocal effect, there's a few people. First, Voice Hack, VOICEHACK, Voice Hack by Mary Zimmer. She's amazing. Another one, Tony Link, TONILINKE. He's a German vocalist, amazing teacher. But that's the thing, he explains some things about rough vocal effect, but it's not a training tool. You just learn them, like I just said, you just learn a bit about them. It's not something that is going to give you feedback. So this is why most of us don't have a tutorial, warm-up, or anything like that. We're just explaining the sound. So Tony Linke, he has an amazing YouTube channel. Aliki Katriou. So ALIKIKATRIOU. She's also amazing. She has an amazing tutorial. But then again, those people are trained in vocal pedagogy. And they are, a lot of people consider that I'm a geek when they listen to me, like, wow, he's a geek. Like, they are 10 times geekier than myself. When I have a question about anything, I go to them. I go to my friend Dr. Enrico De Lorenzo, who, like I explained, is the final boss in its field, is a phoniatrician, laryngoscopic, and an actual practitioner. So for me, they're the one that I look upon when I need an answer to something. So those would be, because I have a few French one, but those would be the English one. So Voice Hack, Mary Zimmer, Tony Linke, Aliki Katriou, those would be the one that I recommend for now. And if you're French, there's my friend Miroshka or Arnaud Ménard, who are really amazing.
So, like Tish, my background is I was an opera singer for a decade. So all throughout that, I've heard things about, not using or being careful with things like glottal stops and the like. So my question is, when doing attack sounds, do you find that plosive or non-plosive consonants are better for vocal health, or is it just whatever works best for the individual?
Okay. Your question implies that the people who taught you that notion about vocal health, they do know a lot about extreme voices. They don't.
Not
right?
questioning that.
No, but I'm just saying that because, like I said, a lot of people, it's, oh, this is bad. Like I've made a career, and several people that I know made a career out of doing stuff that are considered bad by vocal health practitioner and people who actually, because when you sing opera, it's a long line of different establishment who put out some rule and what to do and what not to do. But then when it comes down to extreme voices or for different sound, like their knowledge of it are limited. For me, and that's the thing, like what is the industry asking of you? Realism. And realism, in the sense of an attack sound, a pain sound, or a death sound, it's not going to be ah! Ah! Because this is what you would do naturally if you were actually tortured. You wouldn't go like, ah! Yeah! Get down! Grenade! Get down! Grenade! So they require realism. And in order to be realistic, sometimes you have to do stuff that, would be perceived as dangerous for your voice. But this is where you have, and there's, again, a lot of our story. Like even ACTRA, my own union in Canada, did a survey about extreme voices in video game. And basically 73% of all the recording sessions involve projected voices. Right? And a lot of people have lost their voice, sometimes for several days, sometimes for 2, 3, 4 days, before they could recuperate from that specifically. So I wouldn't say that there's something not to recommend, but I would say that what they're looking for is realism. And it's hard to fake it. Like when I do, for example, choking sound for a video game. Like, I react exactly like if I was choking. And the thing is, even if you know you're not choking, your body will react very differently, especially after 30 minutes. But if you want to make the sound realistic, you have to go through that whole ordeal and be as real as possible, right? They're looking for realism, and it's hard to go around that, right? So you have to get in the dirt, in the mud, and produce those sounds. Again, you want to produce them as safely as possible. But again, it's more of a question of training. Like I was explaining, I'm doing vocal stunt work. And this, shouting, dying, attacking, this is what I consider vocal stunt work. And I'm going to go further. Only trained people should be allowed to do vocal stunt work. Because only trained people are allowed to do stunt work in movie. Why would it be different for voice acting? Again, so then it comes down to a matter of training. What kind of training do you need to be a certified vocal stunt performer? But for me, it baffles me to this day that they're asking this of anyone, even when they're not trained. And of course, you're a voice talent. You don't want to disappoint the client. You will do it. And then you will have a problem. You will develop vocal dysphonia. But that is going to be on you. You have to advocate for yourself and to know your limits as a voice talent. And sometimes if you know that the recording session will involve those sounds, well, you need to practice and train for that first. But if you're not, don't do it. That's my take on it.
First, I want to start off by saying, wow, this is incredible. You are
Thank you.
awesome. This is freaking fantastic. You know, for myself, I relate a lot to the heavy metal thing because my brother, he's in a heavy metal band, and they do stuff like the Lamb of God style of vocals, and I've always really enjoyed that. I always struggled doing this sort of stuff because what I found happened to me is I spent a lot of time trying to mimic it,
Yeah.
but not quite hitting it. And so I know there's been the talk of seeing the vocal speech therapists. What would you recommend for somebody that, because I take a lot of inspiration from, there's a heavy metal vocalist from the band Arch Enemy.
Yeah.
He ended
Alisa
up-
Webb-Glitz.
Yeah, she's
I've
fantastic.
worked with her. I've worked with
Yes.
her on Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy, the video
Wow.
game. I hired her to do some
Wow.
voice acting.
So
yeah,
being able to take that skill, transfer it over into the voice acting realm, how would you recommend building that? Because I did talk about, like I did ask earlier something about, like, you know, the vocal health and the technique. Finding that right technique for something so intense like that.
Yeah.
Like those false chords, gutturals and stuff like that. Put yourself in my shoes. I've had a great admiration for it. I can maybe do it sometimes if I push enough, but I don't quite know. How would you recommend building that skill set?
Yeah. Well, first, it's going to take a long time. Like it took a long time, as you know. And just by the way, if you don't know what Lamb of God is, it's a country band. They play country music. I'm joking. It's a metal band.
They've actually done some country covers now. That's the funny part.
The thing is, this is why, for me, like, this is where vocal coach can help. Basically, they can help you fine tune because you can already produce a vocal effect. So, right? It's not about activating the vocal effect. You can do it. Maybe you're not doing it in the right position or with the right amount of pressure or with some time. And again, like, if you know what twang is, yeah, like sometimes it's just some different things, very small things that you need to change in order for you to feel comfortable when you do that vocal effect. So for that, I do believe a vocal coach, because you already know how to do it, can help you fine tune what you are already doing to help you to make it sustainable. But then again, if you don't do it often, if you don't put some little exercises, again, to learn to be comfortable with vocal distortion, like for example, on vocal fold, I don't always like go, whoa! Most of the time I just do, I'm just producing the sound, because again, you need to build muscle memory. You need to do those exercises in a small quantity. You know the key, like there's a poison, arsenic, that I think that you can get used to if you take it in a small amount. Is that it? For me, I would apply, I wouldn't say take arsenic. I would say that's the kind of thing that if you put it little by little, if you implement small exercises, you know, in a weekly routine, that can actually improve. Because like I said, avoiding it is not training.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But you just need to find the right amount. How much do you want to put small exercises in your vocal routine?
And the
Pleasure.
thing that comes up for me is that first we open our awareness, right? That's the first so this today is opening our awareness, and then we take explore, and then we figure out how it works for ourselves, and then we put it into action, and then we have it.
Exactly. It's basically like if we were to use a template, it's learn how to activate, right? It's you need to find the starting point, and then learn how to get comfortable with what you are able to activate. Like a lot of people want to do a lot of different sound, but I always say, like, focus on what you're good at first. Build solid foundation for those vocal effects first, and then experiment and develop other stuff. But this is where, for me, so that, like, what are you good at? And then let's focus on that. And then after that, try to expand the range and work on sustainability. That would be like the template for but then again, within that template, everything is different because every voice is different, right?
It's a great alien voices is a great
All
last
right.
question.
So alien voices. The thing is, with alien voices, you can go really far because you're not bound by the dialect of humans, the way we construct our own language. So when I start, because I did have to invent 5 alien languages for Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy, the game, the video game, not the movies, unfortunately. That would be flying in a helicopter.
Not yet.
Super rich. I'm joking. So the thing is, my first take on it was like to break the concept of languages, right? The way we are sometime, like for one, I was using the Uvula. Right, so when I was talking about different voice technique have limitation, you have to find the limitation first. What vowel and consonant are easier to pronounce with the voice technique you're using? So I had to experiment. Like when I was talking at the beginning, go through the alphabet. I had to go through the alphabet basically to see with that vocal effect which consonant and then which vowels were easier to pronounce. And then from there, I started with keywords that I knew would come back a lot because I needed an anchor. I needed something to start with so that I could expand, right? And this, depending on the type of script line that you have, it can be anything, basically. And then I went wild. Like I even took some, because the thing is, you don't want to make it sound like it's a really precise known language. You don't want to make it sound Japanese. You don't want to make it sound like it needs to be clearly distinct. But sometimes you have to take your own background, what you know in consideration. So for an example, at some point, there was a word in English which was nothingness in alien language. Nothingness in French is néant. So I ended up with néant. Néant. So I was taking things from here and there, but when I'm talking about the fact that I was trying to break, from the mold of modern and current languages, when I started to practice with the actors, we found out that first I had to change the script a little bit because it was too much complex for them to actually be able to pull it off. I could pull it off, but because I've been practicing those for like 3-4 months. So sometimes you don't have that amount of time to do that. So I had to change. And then we had to put human element, even though those are alien, when those alien are asking a question, we had to put that little inflection. Right? So people could understand that it's a question. Because in alien, language, like I said, we can go, wow, maybe they don't have the same inflection at the end when they're asking a question. That is a possibility. But for the benefit of the players, so that they could understand something, we had to put back some human element to the language construction, which was funny, but it was for an intent purpose. It was so people could understand that even though it's alien, that alien is asking a question, right? So we had to put back human element in this. But then again, like my first take on it was I could go wow, and then I found out that I had to dial it back a little bit, and I had to put some human inflection in the way that we were doing the voice acting. But yeah, explore the alphabet. And with each voice technique, see what's easiest with vowel and consonant are easiest, and then play with that. But you will find out again that at some point you have to put those sometime human inflection and elements so that people who listen to it can actually identify that you're asking a question, or you have a pause, or it's a comma, or or it's the end of a sentence, and you have to have a drop to signify the end of a sentence.
Right.
So yeah, that would be my 5-minute answer to that. I could talk about that for a whole hour.
It also seems like if you have any further information about the physicality or the temperament or the how what the culture is, right? Because if it's a
Yeah.
fierce culture with little stocky things and big teeth or something like that, that would
What you're
kind of
saying,
inform.
there's one element I haven't touched. What elements are actually modifying the sound creation of the voice design of a creature or monster, right? And there's a lot. There's element will influence the voice design, and there's element will influence the acting. Like, let's say it's a warrior race. Like, they're just warriors and they live thousands. And of course, like for me, when I think about that, I think about, in the army where people are like, whoa, it's really dry and authoritative. So that would be my take on that. In Alien, there's another thing. But also, for example, the function. If that guy is a grenadier, I would voice it differently than if he is a sniper. So there's, for me, the one that are influencing the voice design would be the physical element. And also, there's something that I call vocal archetypes, which basically, when you close your eyes and you think about an orc, what's the voice you're hearing? Low, guttural, and unfortunately British or Cockney. I'm looking at you, Jonathan. So at some point, some vocal effect for some very specific type of character become so much the audio reference for everyone that to play within those audio references, this is where you have to go. To this state, when I'm asked to voice, not myself, but one of my voice talent is asked to voice an evil witch, what do you think the vocal archetype is? The evil witch in The Wizard of Oz. And Lord of the Rings did the same thing for goblins. Goblins, high. Orcs, low. And there's a lot of characters that have very specific vocal archetype. So first you have to be knowledgeable of different vocal archetype first. And then, because sometimes that's the thing with vocal archetype, one voice technique can be applied to different monster. The same. What's going to change is the acting. The acting of a zombie is different than the acting of a troll. It's different than the acting than... So that will change. But usually the physical element influence the voice design, and there's a lot of other element will influence the acting part. Right? But this is very, like, for me, meticulous process that I usually go through to do that.
So many layers. Oh my gosh, this has been absolutely brilliant. Sebastien, thank you for taking the time to be with us all. And thank you all for taking the time to be here with us.
Absolutely.
I always love, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I always love when I have the moment where it's like, yeah, like you feel like a little kid, like, yeah, let's do it. So that's super awesome. Fantastic. Everybody, well, Kelsey, thank you on so many levels for keeping everything flowing today and for connecting us with Sebastien, because Kelsey reached out after a conference. So that's how we do it. That's how we get to know each other. So looking forward to working with you in any context whatsoever, Sebastien. So further collaboration to be explored, and everybody touch base. This, I think, sometimes when we get these things that are really, really specific, it may seem like, oh, well, what does that have to do with anything? I don't really want to do creature voices. But if you even spend a little bit of time understanding, like just exploring this, to know what your instrument does and how not to be afraid of how to go to extremes, know that you'll be safe. It's going to inform everything else that you do. Not that everybody has to do this, but to be able to explore this and understand your instrument and yourself in this work will allow you to be able to do anything, really. So it's an interesting mindset to get into.
Absolutely. And I think that just the journey of exploration, of your self-exploration that you go through when you try to go through those different voice effects, to try to mimic different sound, to try, just that journey in itself is worth everything. Because you want to be aware of your own capacity, what you can do, and explore fully our instrument, not just partly, not just the part that we've been told that we can use. Right?
Right.
Because the part that we've been taught that we can use is this. Our voice is this. There's a lot of things that we can do with that. So just that, for me, is amazing in itself. And the thing is, I know, and we all know, that voice acting, even though it's a huge community, it can be highly competitive, right? So sometimes having an edge, and an edge meaning being able to explore different niche and do different things, it can actually help, because you never know. Sometimes you can be called for a creature and they love your voice and they call you for an NPC. Or vice versa. You go for an NPC, they love your voice, but now they're aware that you can do creature voice acting. So they give you more, and usually the more flexible and the more diverse you are with your voice, the more chance you have of getting the job. It's also interesting because you can explore different types of character and work that you can get from doing that, right?
Yeah.
It's niche, but it's not that niche. Because if you look at video game, monster, creature, shouting, it's everywhere. Maybe not in Mario, but even Mario has some Goomba, right?
Something. Yeah, it's stylized, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this is fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. The replay should be out in the next couple days. Feel free to share this far and wide. Let people know what your takeaways were from it, what you got from it, and let's see. Next thing coming up, Ask the Sensei, is coming up on November 6th, I think. It's going to be an audiobook focus with Ronnie Butler. And check out the Fight Clubs. And then get to know V.O. next month. We'll be working with our demo producers, Brittany Cox and Ryan Ricks from Next Level Voice Demos. We do a thing twice a year called the Demo Listen Derby. So everyone sends in their demos and we run them through their paces, run them through the gauntlet like a Demo Listen Derby. So lots of good stuff coming up. Thank you all. And Sebastien, thank you. And we'll see you all next time.